Hour being 7 o'clock. Monday, July 11th, 2022. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. Before we go any farther, though, I'd like us to salute the flag, and I'd ask Councilor Susie if you'd lead us in that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Susie. We're joined this evening by our recording secretary, City Clerk, Katie Gargano, and I'd ask her to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Here.
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Lippman,
Present.
Counselor Haynes,
Here.
Counselor Hamel,
Present.
Counselor Felch,
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. We're also joined at council table by City Manager Scott Myers. And our IT is Finance Director Glenn Smith. Item number 7 on our agenda. The City Council regular meeting minutes of June 27th, 2022. I don't know why it was so thin. I don't have them. Maybe you can just tell me when they were produced and disseminated.
They were distributed to the council on July 8th.
Brilliant. With no amendments, adjustments, edits,
Nothing was submitted.
and they will be accepted as submitted. Thank you. Knew I was missing something in my packet. Item number 8 under consent and action items. 8A, the appointments subcommittee met on July 6th, 2022 and interviewed several candidates for appointment or reappointment to the city boards and commissions. The appointment subcommittee strongly recommends the appointment of the following individuals for the terms shown.
I know you have the list in front of you, Mr. Mayor.
I do.
There's one other addition we'd like to make to that. I can do that as part of this, or
Sure.
whichever way
I'll
you want.
pause right after the last one and you can add that person. How's that?
Thank you.
Aaron Bassett requesting reappointment as a regular member of the Library Board of Trustees to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. Marcia Hayward requesting to move from an alternate member to a regular member on the Zoning Board of Appeals to fill the remainder of a term expiring at the end of August 2023. Warren Clement requesting appointment as a regular member of the Downtown TIF District Advisory Board to a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2025. Peter Stewart requesting reappointment as a regular member of the Lakeport TIF District Advisory Board to a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2025. Rebecca Gregoire requesting appointment as a regular member of the Lakeport TIF District Advisory Board to a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2025.
We'd also like to add Ryan Cardella to the Weirs TIF District to a 3-year appointment at the end of June 2025.
So be looking for a motion right now to move that the city council approves the appointment or reappointment of candidates to the city's boards and commissions as presented and recommended by the appointment subcommittee. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you to the work put in by the appointments subcommittee. Terrific idea, Councilor Susie. Some time ago, right? I mean, that was your idea. It's good work. Nice to have you doing that work. Item number 9, which is citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. If there are matters not on tonight's agenda and someone would like to make a comment, now would be the appropriate time. Mr. Smith, I'll wait for your cue in case there's someone online. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening.
Do I have to wait? Only if there's a question.
No question. Step right up.
All right.
Maybe for our clerk, just reintroduce yourself. So
I am Carmen Gifford with the Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce, and I am here on behalf of the New Hampshire Pumpkin Festival, which we haven't talked about for a couple of years. So we are excited to bring that back after the pandemic. It's been gone for the last 2 years. So it's important that we bring the family-friendly festival back to the area. As many of you know, we've been working on raising funds for the festival. Our goal was to raise $50,000 by July 1st. We are at about $17,000. So what we're finding is it's very frustrating and a little disappointing. We know that when we canceled it, we had a lot of outcry that people didn't want to see it go away. We have a board of 21 and we met last week. We want to continue to have the festival, but what we feel is that we're going to have to make some adjustments as to what that festival is going to look like based on the budget that we have. So in conversations with the mayor last week, I mentioned I would love to be able to understand what the funding might be from the city. So today I just wanted to sort of plant that seed that it would be helpful for us rather than waiting till we get a bill after the festival to really understand what you might be willing to contribute to help us make that happen. We have most of the things all in place. Our festival is up online. We have a support option online that people can make donations or contributions. But again, it's a street festival, so we have no tickets and we have no admission fees. So everything that has to do with New Hampshire Pumpkin Festival is really offset by our sponsorships and some of the activities that people are doing. We're going to continue to fundraise through the summer, but obviously we have a delta of some monies because we're going from a 2-day festival. The very first year we were 1 day. We were in this section here. Then we went to a 2-day, which allowed us to bring some other revenue in and set things up for longer periods, like our amusement rides, where we got revenue from a lot of that. We don't have that option this year. So we're really looking at how do we bring that 1 day, the logistics of shutting down the streets, having a really vibrant downtown that we have now, and being able to continue to support that, but have the festival within those confines. So just kind of planting that seed as to what you may be thinking. And if there's an opportunity for there either to be some financial support or some waiving of fees for the services that we do normally get billed for.
So can
How's
can you refresh our recollection of what's gone on with the the traditional group of vendors that
Sure.
you usually solicited and come in here?
Yeah.
What's going on with
We
that?
normally see about 39 to 50 vendors, I would say. It depends on whether they're the amusement rides that are bringing in a large chunk of money and a big space within the festival. Right now, we are working with the the Great New England Artisan and Craft Show, and they'll be doing vendors here, which is not the type of vendors that we've had in the past. They're more artisan level and higher level juried. And the chamber is doing all of the food vendors. So right now we have probably 40 vendors registered today. We have the amusement rides in place. We have entertainment in place. We're going to eliminate the cost of doing the tower. We couldn't do the tower if we didn't do it up in Veterans Square, just because the length of it goes from the sidewalk on one side of the intersection to the other side. We don't have that space from a safety perspective, and to do it in 1 day, engineered and take down. So we looked at having 2 smaller displays, but again, that's 15,000 to bring those engineered pieces in. We do with Public Works have some of our A-frames still available. So what we'd like to do is perhaps do all of the children's pumpkins back in Rotary Park like it happened in the first year and be able to light them there, but that would eliminate some of our bigger costs. Electricity, the tower, electricity is 15 grand, the tower is 15 grand. So right there, we can eliminate those costs.
Mhm. And again, I'm sorry if you're repeating yourself here, but you have a smaller footprint. Is that right, downtown?
Right now, the way we've been planning it, going with our original budget, would be to start at the Legacy Group at the beginning of Main Street and go all the way to the top, and still be able to allow Beacon Street East, Veterans Square, and Beacon Street West to be the vehicle traffic. But we're starting to think about whether we need to be sliding everything over here and really having the vehicle traffic go up Main Street the way it did for the coffee festival, but close off Beacon Street East in the parking lot here on Saturday, start the festival at 10 o'clock, run through after dark. It will be later than normal, so it'll get colder and darker a little bit earlier. The event will kick off really with the runaway pumpkin race for the Wow Trail. That will happen the same morning as well. We've been working with Jennifer Beadle on that.
Any questions from the council on this at this point?
Carmen,
Yes.
Thanks for taking it up again. We've talked before.
I know. I got beat up.
You
I
did.
can't handle that again.
Now, you said did you say, are we going to have the carnival rides or not?
We're not going to have the amusement rides from Miller Amusements. There's just no way.
So you said something about.
Oh, we'll have a kids zone with vertical entertainment out of Guilford. They do the climbing wall, the
Yeah.
bungee jumping.
Okay,
They've
that's
been here every year, usually in the Main Street area.
Yeah.
He has more things to incorporate, and I think this
Okay.
year we would be able to do that.
Okay, I
as
was just
well.
confused when you
It'll-
mentioned both.
It
so-
won't be the larger rides.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then you were saying that you might let the vehicles go up Main Street?
Well,
I don't know
if
that's such a good idea.
we bring the whole festival over here, we would have, the
Oh,
thought
you mean
was,
on in the parking lot, everything
and
here?
Beacon Street East.
Okay.
So you would just be able to go straight. So we would have Beacon Street East, this parking
Okay.
lot, you would have Hanover Street over to the Antique Center. The Pumpkin Alley, Canal Street would still all be part of that walking traffic. My thought would be that the climbing wall and all of that would go up towards the post office because he has lights and just takes up a big amount of space. So it would kind of tie in well to the kids zone that Pumpkin Alley has traditionally been. And I know that's what Jim is planning.
Yeah, what did does the merchants know that? I mean, what's their thought of not having people downtown?
We haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
I'm here just to see what is our budget and what can we do. My biggest concern is that we'll split everything up. We do know that Bank of New Hampshire, they're one of our bigger supporters this year, but they're going to be under construction. So we're not really sure what can happen over there. We would like to have a big cornhole tournament, which could either be in their parking lot near Henry's, or it could be over at Hector's, but we would have to deal with pedestrian traffic the same way that Karen did for the coffee festival. But right now it would be really going over via the closed streets on this side.
Okay, so what, the city in the past has billed you?
Yes.
Okay, so what have you paid, what is the cost for emergency services, both police, fire?
Our police and fire have been under 10 each, anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000 each.
That's
and-
what the city has billed you.
Yeah, we've traditionally paid about $25,000 to the city with police, fire, and public works. I know Wes's department does a lot of work for what we're doing. I have had a brief conversation with them. Without that tower, we're not going to need the cement abutments to anchor the tower. We're not going to, what we shut down in streets and open back up in streets becomes, a cost and impact. So, and I know there's an event Friday night at the Colonial as well. I'm not sure about the Granite State Music Hall or Cake. So being able to go into Main Street and even bringing back, if the 405 runs the beer garden in the Main Street parking lot, that's going to be parking on Friday night. So we wouldn't be able to set that up till very late. The other idea was to put the beer garden on Hanover Street, because the other challenge is church is Sunday morning and we need to have everything cleaned up. Typically our goal is by noon. That's the goal. I'm not sure. if we
So-
hit that mark. Sorry.
So Mayor, in the budget we just passed, didn't we put aside 5,000, Scott, to go to Pumpkin Fest?
I think it was a little under 4,000, which was
Under 4.
the rounded number that got us to the 48,000 and change, so to speak. So I think it was 3,800 just as a placeholder to start doing.
We do have dumpsters. We'll be, typically we throw the pumpkins away, throw all the trash away, and that does go through to the center as well.
I thought it was more than, I thought it was closer
No,
to
I
five,
think- I
but
think Scott's right, because we
Yeah.
had,
we had to make it up to that 48,000. I
Yeah.
remember that. Okay. My question, may I? Okay. Carmen, are you saying right now that you're gonna let vehicle traffic go up Main Street?
Yeah, I haven't put my event license in. That's certainly something to talk about with police, but if we don't let traffic go up Main Street, we've got to fill up Main Street. We got to do something with making sure we have our vendors, our food trucks, we have a rock and roll amusement ride.
Okay, but you haven't had a chance yet to talk to the downtown association.
I actually was talking to Celebrate Laconia just a little bit ago as to what was happening. So it's really a matter of figuring out what people are going to be doing. I have worked with the Defiant Records and Gifts. they would like to spill out. If we close Main Street, they would spill out onto Main Street. If we don't close Main Street, they would spill out onto Pumpkin Alley or Canal Street. You know, the retail stores are open. Some of the others close because of the festival. We have been in touch with Citizen Bank. We're meeting with the Legacy group on Wednesday. Just depends on what people are doing.
I mean, personally, I'd like to see us do something maybe more if we can because I consider this to be Laconia Pumpkin Festival, not the
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire guy. This is it's one of those, like, when you take a look at what is done for the triathlon.
Mhm.
Okay, Timberman that's coming in, okay,
Sure.
and stuff like, this is a big draw, bring a lot of people, especially downtown. And when you see that much, especially with the kids, okay, I think it's significantly important. We have somebody else here in the audience. Charlie, can you answer a question for me if you come up, please? Yes, sir. He wore a tie also.
Putting him on the spot.
That's okay. We've already chatted. So.
Okay, Bruce.
Yeah, I know you're.
Nice tie.
It's the brightest one I could find. I
He's
didn't have to
bringing-
put the light on.
He's bringing the same one, just a different shirt. Charlie, just one question, as I know you're heavily involved in downtown and you have a business there and everything else. This is my personal, how important is it, do you think, to the traffic on Main Street or closing it and trying to fill it?
From a business perspective, if you've got 5,000 people moving up and down the street, I can't think of a better outcome for any business downtown. I mean, traffic is for convenience of parking and driving through, but if you could replace that with people like we do at Lakeside Avenue, you just can't beat that at all. And when I was listening to Carmen, and we did speak earlier today, and she was saying how some of the businesses, well, geez, they may not like it, or they don't think they're going to get any business from it. That's kind of what we went through, those same kind of pains back in 1992 and 93, when we changed the traffic plan on Lakeside Avenue. It was the same thing that people were, not everybody, but several of the merchants were very upset about it because they thought sure as hell it was going to mess their business up, kill their business. But the reality is that they quickly realized that if they weren't selling something that the visitors like, they could certainly get something in or rent their space out, which several of them do, and make an awful lot of money from all those people coming. And that's something that downtown, I think, could do if they felt that their business couldn't make a lot of money off all these visitors that are here for Pumpkin Fest. So I think, either way, Carmen's idea of putting it all here, whatever works will be better, certainly better than nothing.
Thank
Definitely better than nothing. And since you've got me here, so I don't have to come back, and I don't want to.
You can. I have another question for you, Carmen.
Sure.
Have you reached out to our Parks and Recs, to Amy, and see what they're gonna?
Yeah, Parks and Rec, Amy was at our forum and I've talked to her since. They're going to do drawn buggy horse rides with wagons, which they've done in the past. Saturday was originally the children's event in Opeechee Park. So she would like to really capitalize on the kids on Saturday here at the festival. We do have a costume parade that will take place and end at the mill when they put the Riverside Ducks in. We do have an event for the zombie walk
Okay.
as well. The challenge for me when I talk about moving it is because we have to set it all up, and we have to set it up between the wee hours of the night and 10 o'clock when everything starts. And then as the day goes on, one of the things that we ran into when we first did the one day was that we ended up with pockets of empty space, and people were either way over here or over here, and there was not a continuity. So the feeling of it moving it is really because it's one day, and the logistics of bringing it all together and then taking it all down. If we spread it out, we need more dumpsters because they need to be closer to the trash and closer to the pumpkins and where we pick them up. It just creates a little bit more volunteer dynamics and set up and take down a very small window.
One last question. I'm not sure if it's probably it's a tough question.
Yep.
Is this a revenue generator for the chamber?
It hasn't been really, it's been almost a break even every year. The idea was that it would be, but again, we're trying to bring, we do represent 30 communities. So we're trying to bring people to the area. Our marketing is television, radio, print, digital, a 3-hour window. We do a come catch the glow marketing the whole month of October. We do a fall fun guide that gets distributed at every welcome center throughout the I-93 corridor. So we're marketing this event with everything else that's happening and saying, go to the Weirs, go to Wicked Weirs, go to, any of the things that are happening in the fall, because it's a time that's quiet. And so we know people are coming from out of state and many times from out of the country because they don't see pumpkins in fall and foliage. So all those pieces go into the consideration.
So, Counselor, I just want to point out that the reason this is New Hampshire Pumpkin Fest versus Laconia Pumpkin Fest was because back when Pumpkin Fest left Keene, New Hampshire and came to Laconia, the rush all statewide to have a pumpkin fest in all these multiple communities, the thought was that we would call this New Hampshire Pumpkin Fest in Laconia to prevent somebody else from grabbing that name and promoting it as such in another city around the state, so that we wouldn't lose that push, so to speak. And I when Carmen was talking about the first year, I'm not sure which year you were talking about.
When Ruth was here.
The first year when Ruth was here, there were activities Friday night. Friday night was packed, and we had the major tower, the big tower, right over here in Veterans Square that first year, and then everything was done Sunday morning. And if again, I'm not involved with the chamber on this, but I'll just, from the outside looking in, if you're having trouble setting up to do it the wee hours of the night is ridiculous. So if you're doing it here or someplace else, the city should work with you to be able to have you set up the day before, because it's not enough time. And I would like to see the city get involved with this more, much like they have with Motorcycle Week. And again, Carmen and I talked about this earlier, and we probably maybe have a difference of opinion on this. I realize the chamber, much like the Motorcycle Week Association, we want to take money in to help pay our bills and do what we do. The chamber's nonprofit, we're a nonprofit. But if the city of Laconia, not this year, it's too late, but perhaps next year, runs the vendors and stuff like they do for Motorcycle Week, so that if you rent out city space, you keep the money, you keep any fee money, and you help mitigate the expenses that the city is presented with public safety, public works and stuff like that, to help the two balance out. And that way the chamber could concentrate on bringing people here, getting sponsors, because I don't know how many sponsors they can get for something that's one day. That's tough. 2 days, it's a lot easier.
We have about 22 sponsors right now, but Bob, the other thing is, if we were just looking for sponsorships from Laconia business, it would be even more difficult. So by being able to look across the Lakes region, a business can't survive with just customers in one town. And so what we look at is a lot of these businesses that come forward and sponsor, their footprint is the Lakes region. And so they're looking at the consumers and the visitors and the tourists and our residents that are coming to the event. And that's what makes the value in them paying for that sponsorship.
Thank you.
So I'll just say this, Bob, it is Counselor.
Sorry, I've known
From
you
my
too long.
business down here, Pumpkin Fest was the best revenue producing day of my entire year. And I would think that would be the same thing for a lot of other businesses, restaurants included, that we have downtown. So
Even All My
or-
Life Jewelers, they've had some of their biggest sales during Pumpkin Fest.
So
I don't disagree with you, Charlie. Carmen, Bob, okay, Mark, I'm sorry.
And Mark is
I
on our
don't-
board
I
of
don't-
directors.
Right.
so.
I don't disagree with any saying. I'm just trying to figure out ways. I think probably, I hope most of the council agrees with me. How can we help you? Okay, that's.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions?
No,
Thank you, Carmen.
Perfect. Thank you
Mark.
all very much.
Okay. Anyone online looking to speak?
No.
Thank you. Oh, one more. Hello, Charlie.
Nice tie.
it's not the same tie, by the way. I'll bring the other, I'll hold them up. I just want to, I didn't write a letter to the paper because, there's just so many letters, it would just get lost. I just want to thank the city of Laconia, all of you sitting here at this table, all the departments, Mr. Anderson behind me, his staff, everything worked out so well for Motorcycle Week this year. We had a really good year, all things considered. The police and fire were wonderful. So I just want to thank you all, both from Jennifer and I and the board of directors. The press conference was wonderful at the theater. I know Scott and Marie not Marie, Nancy did a great job. And I just want to thank you all very much for that. So thank you.
Okay, moving on through our agenda right now, we're going to come up to item number 13, which is our public hearings. We have 4 public hearings to get through this evening. I will read this in its entirety, the lead in is that all right? Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Right, okay. So item number 13A, which is public hearing, a proposed application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for CDBG funds for improvements at the Boys and Girls Club. Community Development Block Grant funds are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for economic development projects, up to $500,000 for housing projects, up to $500,000 for public facility projects, up to $500,000 in emergency funds, up to $25,000 per planning study grant. Also, up to $750,000 is available per public facility project under CDBG COVID funding. All projects must directly benefit a majority of low and moderate income persons. This is a proposed application to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for up to $750,000 in CDBG CV or up to $500,000 in CDBG public facility funds to support improvements, including window replacement and ventilation at the Boys and Girls Club facility located at 876 North Main Street, Laconia. Majority of the participants at the Boys and Girls Club are of low and moderate income. This project conforms with Laconia's housing and community development plan's goal of promoting activities that protect the health and safety of residents and visitors, short-term and long-term goal. Notice of the public hearing was made available in the June 29th, 2022 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and the New Hampshire Union Leader and posted at Laconia City Hall, Community Center, and the Laconia Public Library. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:27 p.m. If you're here to speak to that matter, now would be the appropriate time. I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:28 p.m. Item number 13B, public hearing adoption of the city's residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for proposed improvements at the Boys and Girls Club. The plan outlines measures under the Uniform Relocation Act required for CDBG projects that involve any displacement or relocation of persons or businesses. If the city were to undertake the CDBG project which involved displacement or relocation, they would follow this plan. The plan outlines the measures they would take to find comparable, suitable housing for persons or businesses displaced or relocated. Boys and Girls Club may relocate their operations during construction for safety reasons. They will find a suitable place and temporarily relocate themselves. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 29th, 2022 edition of Laconia Daily Sun and the New Hampshire Union Leader and posted at Laconia City Hall, the Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:28 p.m. If you'd like to speak to this matter, now would be the appropriate time, either in person or online. I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:29 p.m. Item number 13C. Public hearing, a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $170,000 in CDBG housing grant funds. Community Development Block Grant funds are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for the economic development projects, up to $500,000 for housing up to $500,000 for public facility projects, up to $500,000 in emergency funds, up to $25,000 per planning study grant. Also, up to $750,000 is available per public facility project under CDBG COVID funding. All projects must directly benefit a majority of low and moderate income persons. This is a proposed application for the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $170,000 in CDBG housing grant funds. Of the funds, $20,000 will be retained by the city for administrative costs associated with the project. $150,000 of the funds will be subgranted to Lakes Region Community Developers toward the acquisition of 11 Jameson Street in Laconia. The unit will be rented as affordable housing to a tenant of low or moderate income. This project conforms to Laconia's housing and community development plan's goal of encourage a varied stock of safe, sanitary, decent, and affordable housing for persons of all ages and income groups. Notice of the public hearing was made available in June 29, 2022 edition of Laconia Daily Sun and the New Hampshire Union Leader and posted at Laconia City Hall, Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:30 p.m. Anyone who would like to speak to this matter, now would be the appropriate time, either here in the chamber or online. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:31 p.m. Item number 13D, which is a public hearing adoption of the city's residential anti-displacement relocation assistance plan toward acquisition of 11 Jameson Street. This plan outlines measures under the Uniform Relocation Act required for CDBG projects that involve any displacement or relocation of persons or businesses. If the city were to undertake a CDBG project which involved displacement or relocation, they would follow this plan. The plan outlines the measures they would take to find comparable suitable housing for persons or businesses displaced or relocated. No displacement or relocation is anticipated with this project as this is a voluntary sale. Notice of the public hearing was made available in June 29, 2022 edition of Laconia Daily Sun and the New Hampshire Union Leader and posted at Laconia City Hall, the Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:31 p.m. Now would be the appropriate time if you'd like to speak to this matter to either step forward or raise your hand online. We'd be happy to hear you. I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:32 p.m. Moving on to item number 15, which is the mayor's report. I'd like to forego speaking this evening and move right along to council comments. Councilor Felch.
Yeah, I just, a couple of things. I've had an issue with our ordinance as far as storing campers and trailers and whatnot. I mean, people are parking their motorhome in their parking lot and getting a notice because they're storing their mobile home in their driveway. I think we need to have a discussion as to what storage pertains to. I mean, if they're here all summer, they're parking their motorhome, they, use it once in a while, is that storage? If their boat's in the water and their boat trail is sitting in their driveway, it's that storage. I mean, if the boat's on it, maybe, but my opinion of that was more towards the winter when they're actually storing their summer vehicles and not using them. So I'd like to maybe add it to our agenda for next meeting and have a discussion about that.
Go to one of our subcommittees.
Yes,
I think that would be wise. Which one?
I think this is, I believe it's mine.
Good.
Government operations and ordinances, wouldn't it?
Sounds like
Exactly where it goes.
I'm going to send that right over to your committee then, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
You're on.
Counselor Felch, you're on that committee as well.
All right.
Worked out perfectly.
There you go.
Well done.
So thank you for that.
No.
Also would like to look at getting a crosswalk at T-Bones. I've had quite a few complaints and suggestions to do that. And I got some close calls with some of their help crossing the road all the time. So I'd like to look into that as well.
So I think we've looked at that before, and I know there's some chatter going on social media on why one was put in across from the Barton's Hotel project and why the folks at T-Bones can't get one. First of all, I think the ones that were put in front of Barton's was paid for by the developer, and the sight lines work in that area, and to cross there gets them to a sidewalk where there's no sidewalk on that side of the street. We have looked at the T-Bones location after somebody spoke of it a couple of years ago. And while it would work as you're coming up from the McDonald's area up the hill, you've got plenty of sight there. But if you're coming in the other direction, you're coming over that crest in front of the former Friendly's building, and you just don't have the distance. And what we found, what studies have found, is if people get into a crosswalk, they have a false sense of security of now they're in the right, and you can be in the right all you want, but if you get hit by a car because the sight distance isn't there and someone's coming over the hill, it's not a good outcome. So truly, it would have to go further up, maybe closer to the Bernini's location or the Marigas, which means, and as we all know what human nature is, people, if they park behind the golf cart area, they're not going to come down and walk further up the street away from where they're going to then use a crosswalk to come down on a side with a sidewalk there. So I know there's chatter, and I know some unique things are being said on the city playing favorites. We won't do it for the employees at T-Bones, but it really is a safety and a sightline issue. And happy to meet anybody out there on site and have you, or next time you drive down the road and you're coming over that crest, really figure out if you're going 30 miles an hour, how much time is there to stop if all of a sudden you see one, and especially at nighttime. You know, I mean, I guess you could always do the rapid reflector beacon and that type of stuff if people are using it, but you know, in the daytime, that's not going to necessarily be as visible in it. We truly would be setting people up for a danger at that point. So happy to meet with anybody there, but we did look at that a couple of years ago, and that particular location just does not lend itself.
Counselor Hamel.
Thank you, Mayor. I was honored a week or so ago to go to the Lakes Region Planning Commission Awards Night for projects that were done within the community and felt worthiness of an award. So the Colonial was put in as a recipient or a request to be thought of as a major project in the area, and which it is. So the Colonial was picked as a winner from them. There was quite a few really good projects also that was there. So it was an award of excellence, June 29th, 2022. And it's also from Belknap County Economic and the city of Laconia. So I'd like to present this to you so we can share it here, and then we got to share it with
Well, thank you.
Belknap Economics also.
Thank you. Again, I'm sort of just sitting here. I appreciate that, first and foremost. It's very kind of you. But as
I'm presenting it to you as the city.
I know, but I often think that you and Ed and folks who are here a lot longer than I have been here, who put an awful lot of work in when everyone told you couldn't get it done. You're the ones that really deserve all the accolades of this. But thank you on behalf of the city.
You know, I think the city can be proud to receive that.
Well done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Cheney.
I know this is a surprise, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask if we could find out about Isaiah and whether they're still providing sleeping overnight. My understanding was they had a 120-day window within which to do that, and I just want to know if they've closed the window.
Yes, I want to say it was April 1st was the March 31st, April 1st, I believe was the end of the season. And there should be no overnight guests staying there at this point.
Thank you.
I will let you know as there's the working group. We called the mayor's homelessness task force has started again meeting with Officer Adams and other stakeholders in the community to begin some outreach into each ward throughout the city to sort of bring people into the fold for naturally we all have concerns. We need to have collaborative approach to some of this stuff because really it's not just downtown here at Rotary Park. We realize it's other parts of the city as well. So there'll be some outreach in the next couple of weeks as to what the initial steps might look like, and certainly get you up to speed, and hopefully we can continue to take some steps. Councilor Lippman.
Just in that light, I'm not an expert on this, but there's new funds available to support placing people in housing, including subsidies to landlords, protection against damage, and so on and so forth, that I think that your task force ought to, if you're not aware of, ought to be.
Is this the $100 million allocation from the governor, or is it something more specific than
I
that?
think it may be something more specific than
Okay.
that, and Chris Santinello was the person who probably could brief us best.
We have a meeting within the next week or so. So thank you. Yes.
If I might just add, Mr. Mayor, I've heard some comments in the recent past about, whether or not the police department was hassling people in Rotary Park and pushing them out and all that. That never happened. We went in and stood there, and folks got sick of looking at the cops and left, but no one was dragged out of the park or ordered to leave. It was a peaceful effort to get them to move along.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney. Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to thank the Parks and Recreation and Councilor Felch for 4th of July and the parade. It was great. I do have a question though. Can I ask Councilor Felch, is there any money allocated for the parade?
No.
Okay. I think that's something we need to look at as we go forward next year. I agree. Okay.
Do something else. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just mimic what he said, thanks to Tony and Amy in the Parks and Rec Department. Amy did a great job over there. I was with her quite a bit of the night, and the fireworks were pretty spectacular. They were really, really good.
How about liaison committee reports? Any committee reports or liaison reports tonight? Yes, go right ahead, Councilor Cheney.
I just want to report, I'm not sure that I'm a liaison, but I do attend regularly the Weirs Action Committee meetings. They met the 30th of June and announced that their fundraiser for Motorcycle Week this year raised $45,000. It was about a 13% increase over 2021. There was, I didn't hear anything but compliments on, to follow up on what Charlie said. Everyone at that meeting complimented the police and the fire department for their efforts and how, relatively speaking, quiet it was. I think that question has to be questioned as it relates to black skid marks on the street, how quiet it is. But other than that, it was, I certainly can remember some motorcycle weeks that were a lot more raucous than these are, but they're all my age now. Yeah, that's it.
Bob and I remember too.
Yes.
So moving along to item number 19 right now, which is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. Welcome. This would be for anyone online as well as in the chamber who would like to speak to items on tonight's agenda.
I'm not sure if I'm right because this wasn't on the agenda, but it was discussed on council or comments. So I'm hoping I'm covered on that.
No, go right ahead. I'll give you 2 minutes.
I just want to comment, I guess, to Councilor Felch's comments about the crosswalk in front of T-Bones and that, that is a very dark area. And there are ways for T-Bones and their employees to mitigate that at night. And that is with a vest, holding up something that shines. They could put up a spotlight there to light that up for their employees. There's a lot of ways. And it's not just at T-Bones. Pedestrians around the city have a habit of just waltzing out into the street at night with dark clothes on, or riding a bicycle with no lights on it and dark clothes. So for somebody to come back to the city, whether it's on social media or whatever, and say, you need to fix this, it's really just common sense and using your head when you're out at nighttime and not walking out in front of traffic, just waiting for the cars to go by and stuff like that. I'm really not lecturing you guys. I really just want, maybe somebody watching this will hear this and they can yell at me or whatever, but that's just my comment on that.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Anyone online, Mr. Smith? Okay, let's move right along to item number 20, which is our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo the comments about the 4th of July and Councilor Felch for the parade. Nice job. And Amy and Matt and their team at Parks. Not only was it that full day over at Opeachy, the beaches were jamming that weekend. And my understanding was the cars lined up at 7 o'clock waiting for the gate to open at Weirs Beach, and the lot was full by 7:15, let's say. But good beach weather, and we're thrilled. And again, Public Works, police, fire, all play a role in this. So thank you to everybody there. Moving on to the financial and operational trends report, which is included in your packet. Starting at the top of the first page, again, you can see current year assessment. We're actually on pace, even a little bit ahead of last year at this time. So almost $18 million in new building permit value pulled just since April 1st. You can see the data for fire and rescue on this page, police on the next. On the public assistance, again, the gross relief is up over the prior years, as you can see there, the last couple of years. But again, please note the reimbursement line that is there through some of the various COVID relief programs that the city is receiving reimbursement. So the net cost of welfare for this year is, or last year, I should say, at this point was not as much as the gross relief amount. Second page of the report, you can see property tax collection. We had the bills that were due a couple of days into July, so I'm sure that number of 83.5% collection will true up by the time we have this report next month. But again, no worries there. And all of these numbers are unaudited. We've closed the year fiscal. If you didn't get invited, Glenn and his team have a New Year's party on July 1st for Happy Fiscal New Year, and have some very nice light refreshments for the group. So they're very excited about fiscal New Year. There we go. So anyway, motor vehicle numbers, again, we had budgeted just a little under 3.3 million. We came in a little over 3.5 million. So we exceeded target, and we were up again $100,000 over last year's number. I don't know where people are finding cars, but they're finding them, and they're coming on down and registering them. The overtime numbers there, and those will again roll over now that we're starting the new year. The last one I'll point out is on the last page of the report, the boat taxes. Again, we increased our revenue projection up 10,000, and we still exceeded it by 10,000. So just short of $121,000 in boat registration. And again, that's up just a couple of $1,000s over last year. Due to the timing of the 4th of July holiday and staffing and whatever, we don't have the EMS billing history in there this month, but we'll double up next month and get that report to you. Happy to take any questions anyone might have.
When do you think you'll have a final tally for Bike Week?
Again, we're pretty close. We typically have a straggling bill or two. Some preliminary numbers, whether you want to include some of the COVID funds that we backfilled for the cost of the porta potties, which went crazy 2 years ago from literally $5,000 to around $25,000. So we used some ARPA funds to backfill as economic development lost revenue. So I think our expenses this year were roughly in the 170 to 175,000 range. Our revenues, again, with maybe a little bit of straggling money still to roll in, was around the 140 to 145,000 range. And again, that doesn't include any backfilling. If you count the money that we backfilled from ARPA into the motorcycle week account, it pretty much brought it to within a couple $1,000s of breaking even. So we'll work on that as we're closing everything else that finance is doing, and have firm numbers to you at the next meeting.
Okay. But, in years out, probably those opera funds won't be there to backfill. So it's going to end up a deficit to the city.
It has in the last couple of years. It has run a deficit. Part of that is just some of the cost of police and fire going up. Out of town police rates are going up. Retirement system cost had gone up on those components as well. So there's a number of things. I think the revenue with the increase the council did in the the boardwalk rental sites, the city rents, and also the vendor fees going up a little bit. That certainly helps stabilize, the revenue, next year for the 100th. Certainly hoping for, a banner event for a banner marquee type of year type of thing. So.
Yeah. So now we have roughly a year, say, I'm going to say 9 months because things have to happen in between there. Why doesn't the council consider getting a fee from the property owners? I mean, whether it's through the, they call it there, the task force there that looks at their projects and what they have on their land and all that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
They do pay a fee to the special events committee to have their application come in and reviewed. Is that a 150? I want to say it's $150
I think
for
then
some.
we need to look at adjusting that. The people who own those properties make huge money when they rent those out, 30, 40, 50,000. So I think we should relook at that and see to have that portion help support Bike Week. I've asked the governor a couple times to come up and speak with us because it's getting that it's falling back on the tax roll of the taxpayers. And when I started 17 years ago, that was one of the first things that Henry and I looked at is how can we make it self-funding? And we came up with the permits and the fees and all that there. Those are falling behind now. And I don't want to see it go back on the taxpayers. If you're looking at $30,000, $40,000 minus, to me, there's no reason why the state can't help with something. This is probably the biggest event the state has all year long and brings in huge money for rooms and meals, tax, liquor, tolls, you name it. I mean, they get pretty rich from this one event. And Laconia is ground zero for a week. And I know they help out with state police and things like that, which is fine. But I think they got to realize that if they want to keep it going, and it might get to that point is whether we keep it going, that they need to contribute somehow through their tourist, Hampshire Tourist Organization or whatever. But, look at all they've done for the racetrack down there. They widened the highways. They've done tons of stuff down there. And so far, the call has been unheard for the governor to come up here and just sit down and talk with us. And we can show them the figures of where we're at. But, I think something's going to need to be done in the next few years. It's going to jeopardize the event.
And just to be clear, we've been carrying a little bit of reserve balance. You can see the reserve amount on page 5 of your report. So this has not anytime we've had a deficit, it's coming out of the reserve account. So this has not fallen onto the back of property taxpayers.
No, I
at this
know.
point. So
I didn't say that.
Okay, I just want you to know that it's still funded through reserves from prior years.
We used opera money this year, and that fund was 170,000, 160,000 to begin with, right?
No.
I think you put in the amount of that you collected, right?
It flows. I mean, so we could have some money flow into it in April and May as people are paying their licensing fees, but we don't hit the expense. So sometimes when you see it go up, it's an artificial hit because all you're seeing is the revenue land there and you haven't paid out the expenses until the event actually happens. So you really need to go back and probably look at where the number was in January versus where it was maybe in April or May.
Yeah, but it's come down considerably.
It has,
And if
absolutely.
you get a few years like that, then someone's paying
And we've
for
been
it.
down on vendors. We used to have, over 200 vendors at the event. And I think this year, if I want to ballpark the number, 170, 180. Closer to 170. So, even from 7, 8, 9 years ago, you're down 40 vendors and 40 vendors at what was, $450, now $600. I mean, that's, in the area of $20,000 in revenue from 40 fewer vendors coming. And so there's your break even point.
Yeah, because the vendors are slowly disappearing. They can do it online for a whole lot less. They don't have to come in and spend $30,000 or whatever. And a lot of them are getting older. I go to rallies and it's amazing to see how few vendors there are out there now that travel to these events. Americade was terrible. We just had our national rally and that was terrible. So the vendors just aren't going out anymore, But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lippman.
I guess just adding on to what Council Hamel was saying, that there were a number of years where we were generating enough surplus to buy cruisers and other fire department equipment. So we've not only we're close, it's gone, flipped where we were maybe generating 25 to 30,000 to invest in and support public safety and public works type of things, to now being at risk to. So I think in terms of referring maybe to the committee of the council, is start to work on an alternative plan to generate some revenue from within and some revenue potentially by approaching the state a little bit more. Maybe that's something we could work with our elective delegation as the budget process is about to underway at the state level.
Counselor Susie.
And Bob, I support what you're saying all the way, but I also think when I look at what the Wiz is doing, I think it's great. And we shut down all the parking. We don't get no meter income. None of that happens, but there's plenty of dollars that roll through rooms and meals tax to Concord, you might say, or to the state. And then I think it'd be very wise for us to turn around and say to the state, listen, we have a deficit each year. You're going to cover that. Okay, it's not a lot of money. We're probably talking what, maybe $50,000 or so, something like that. I think it's important.
I think probably our best bet is to work with our delegation, because it's not just the governor who has to make a decision. It's the, as you know, it's the House of Representatives and the Senate and the governor. And I think
And what in my experience in Concord, what has happened is there are a lot of communities that say we put a lot more in than we ever get back, and particularly, seacoast communities in the summertime, and they start to look to get a greater return on what they're sending as well. It does start a kind of a battle among legislators as to is the money you're getting back really justified or not, and that sort of gets into an ugly battle. Not saying people should be standing up for the best interests of the city, but I think they've sort of shied away from that battle in years past that I'm familiar with, just because it's a slippery slope of sorts. That's why. But
Maybe there's something else can be done.
Yeah, I think so.
I will share with you, if I can, that there's been attempts probably over the last 3-5 years to have an enabling legislation for a local option bed tax, if you will, so that again, people like Hampton and Conway and Lincoln, Portsmouth, Laconia, you could fall into that, where, do you have that option? Like sometimes you stay in a hotel in a big city, you see the local tax in addition to whatever other, airport charges and state charges around there and stuff. And that has really gone nowhere in recent years in the legislature. They really, even though it's enabling legislation and a community would have to adopt it and add to it, I think the feeling is, if I can say it, is just a backdoor way of taxing people a different way, and the legislature isn't of that mindset right now to allow those local options. So I think some have attempted, for the reasons that the mayor's alluded to, that if you're a Hampton Beach or you're a Portsmouth, you're bearing the brunt of a lot of tourism costs with your public works and your police and your fire, and you're generating all the rooms and meals tax, yet you don't get any more than your basic share based on your population and whatever your formula is to begin with. So that has been attempted, and again, as enabling local option, not mandated, and it hasn't gone anywhere in recent years.
At Americade, what they do is the county they're in, they charge, it's either 1 or 2% on the rooms and meals extra. For those, the county does it for those week or whatever, just that week, and then the city can get reimbursed on
Unless the mother state says you can do it, the local does not have that option available
the state
to
must have
them.
said they could do it because they do it.
Please buy men up there with the boots.
Okay, so any other, I think we're still on city manager's report, aren't we? Any other questions of the city manager? Okay, moving on to, thank you, Scott. Moving on to item number 21 under new business.
Mayor, just closing out the discussion though, in terms of the idea of if we're going to try to do something on fees and such, should we, we can take it up, I guess, at another point, but I think if we want to do something, we ought to organize to do it.
Yeah, I think it should go to the finance committee. That's where it was before.
All right. Counselor Lippman.
Counselor Hamel and Counselor G. You got two.
Now on your
two tied
committee.
Twice tonight.
It's your committee.
Yes, but
Yeah,
you're part
I'll
of
be
it.
there.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Item number 21A,
It's like I think of something to get out of it.
which is the Easter Seals New Hampshire Community-Based Service Program in conjunction with Auto Pack Gallery, be hosting a community-wide car show of hot rods, classic and antique cars owned by local individuals and car club groups. This event will be held on August the 6th, 2022 at 62 Doris Ray Court in Laconia and is a fundraiser for the benefit of Easter Seals New Hampshire. Funds will provide local programming in Belknap County and the Lakes region for enrichment and recreational activities for individuals served by Easter Seals. Easter Seals is requesting a waiver of city fees associated with the event. We're looking for a motion right now that the city council approve the request from Easter Seals New Hampshire for a waiver of city fees associated with the community-wide car show to be held August 6th, 2022. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 21B, which is a request from Weirs Action Committee to hold summer concerts on the boardwalk. The Weirs Action Committee has requested permission to use the boardwalk to provide band concerts featuring the Boardwalk Jazz Quartet. If approved, the concerts will take place on 5 consecutive Sundays from July 17th through August 14th, 2022, from 6 to 9 p.m. The band will play under a 10 by 20 pop-up tent, which will be put in place just prior to each concert and removed at the conclusion of each concert. The band will play at the center of the wide section of the boardwalk facing the street. We use the same electrical receptacles that are used by vendors during Laconia Motorcycle Week. The Special Events Review Commission approved this request at their July 6th, 2022 meeting. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the request from the Weirs Action Committee to hold summer concerts on the boardwalk on 5 consecutive Sundays from July 17th through August 14th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So made by Councilor Phelps, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item number 21C. Update of the letter of agreement with the Laconia Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF, Local 1153 in the city of Laconia to include equivalent firefighters from another state. Scott, would you walk us through this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of years ago, as a way to put another tool in the recruiting toolbox for the fire department, the city council approved a sidebar agreement where if somebody had comparable years of service or some years of service in another New Hampshire-based fire department and had the credentials required to come in and start working with the city, that we had the ability to place them up to the second step. So you had probationary firefighter first and second at the chief's discretion, again, depending on their years of service and their background, as a way to help recruit. And if someone was moving from one part of the state here, and they wouldn't have to start as a probationary firefighter and go through 12 months of probation. That has been in place. I think, as you heard Chief Biotti say during one of the budget presentations, we haven't had occasion to use it yet, but it's nice to know that it's there as an option. The only change really on this one is that it also would tie into somebody coming from out of state, and again, having to have a certain background and credentials and the skill set and the experience to come in and do that. So that's really the only change, is adding in the first paragraph. You can see under RSA 100-A, Roman 8, or equivalent from another state. So again, instead of starting at step 1 at the chief's discretion and the person's experience, they could start them as high as a step 3, and the probation period, instead of being 12 months, is reduced to 9 months. So we don't lose any rights as far as making sure that a new hire is a fit. The chief still has 9 months worth of probation to do that.
So Councilor Lippman has moved to approve the updated letter of agreement with the Laconia Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF, Local 1153 in the city of Laconia to include equivalent firefighters from another state. Is there a second? So made by Councilor Felch. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 22 under unfinished business. Perhaps Scott, you walk us through this too. It's a little number intensive, but fairly straightforward.
Yeah, when we were working on the amended resolutions and putting all the numbers together after the council voted to approve the budget, Glenn was entering the numbers in, and one of the Excel spreadsheet calculations wasn't one of the formulas was not entered in correctly. So as he was moving it from one platform into the system, we realized that the numbers presented to you needed to be amended in a new vote, just so when we go to Department of Revenue in the fall to help set the tax rate, that we've got the accurate numbers. The bottom line change is the amount to be raised by taxes in that third paragraph down of $51,319,002 is unchanged. So that it was really in the total revenue and the total appropriation, just in doing the amendments didn't line up, but the amount to be raised by taxes and everything that you knew going into the budget vote is accurate. So an amended vote tonight just gets the appropriation and the revenue numbers correct, so that we're squared away with DER this fall.
Counselor Susie, you move the motion?
Yes.
All right. Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Haynes, to move a motion to amend the general fund lines of resolution 2022-08 to change total appropriations to $83,203,293 and revenues to $31,884,291, and the balance to be raised by taxes to remain unchanged at $51,391,002. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 22B, which is a proposed application for the to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for CDBG funds for improvements at the Boys and Girls Club. The discussion portion we have read a couple of times this evening. I think you're all familiar with it. We had a public hearing earlier. So right now I'll be looking for a motion to move to approve the submittal of the Boys and Girls Club Improvements Project CDBG application and vote to authorize the city manager to sign and submit the CDBG application. And upon approval of the CDBG application, authorize the city manager to execute any documents which may be necessary to effectuate the CDBG contract and any amendments thereto. So made by Counselor Phelps, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item 22C, which is the adoption of the city's residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for proposed improvements at the Boys and Girls Club. This matter was taken up earlier this evening. We had a public hearing. I won't go through the discussion points here, but right now I'll be looking, because I believe you're all familiar with them. Right now I'll be looking for a motion to move to adopt the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for the proposed Boys and Girls Club project. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 22D, a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $170,000 in CDBG housing grant funds. This application, as you're all familiar, to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $170,000 of the funds. 20 will be retained by the city for administrative costs associated with the project. $150,000 of the funds will be subgranted to Lakes Region community developers towards the acquisition of 11 Jameson Street in Laconia. This unit will be rented as affordable housing to a tenant of low or moderate income. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move to approve the submittal of the Lakes Region Community Developers Acquisition Project CDBG application and vote to authorize the city manager to sign and submit the CDBG application. And upon approval of the CD application, authorize the city manager to execute any documents which may be necessary to effectuate the CDBG contract and any amendments thereto. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hands. That 6 votes in the affirmative of that motion passes. And concluding these motions right now is item number 22E. So glad you put those there. I would have been mixed up. Just can't help it. Item number 22E, adoption of the city's residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan toward acquisition of 11 Jameson Street. Won't read through the discussion portion again, as you read, I read it earlier, and I know you're all familiar with it. There was a public hearing earlier this evening. So right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move to adopt the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for the proposed Lakes Region Community Developers Acquisition Project. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That is 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. I will say this concludes our formal agenda right now. The council intends to enter into a non-public session according to RSA 91A:3 Roman 2, which is in regard to parentheses B, the hiring of any person as a public employee, as well as D, which is consideration of acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property, which if discussed in public would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community. When we enter back into public session, it will only be to adjourn the meeting. No public matters will be discussed or taken up once we come back into public session.
If I can suggest, Mr. Mayor, just because the council may want to treat the minutes of those 2 topics separately, that you go in under one or the other first, and then you come out, and then you go in under the second one, and that way 2 separate sets of minutes can be handled for the 2 items.
Fair enough. I'd like to go in under B right now, parentheses B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. And we will exit that meeting and go right back into another non-public session in regards to parentheses D, consideration of acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property. Okay. So someone would have to move that, and then we'll second it, and so moved by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Littman. And I ask the roll call be taken at this time.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie.
Yes.
Counselor Littman.
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
For you, yes.
Thank you.